You want me to go put a muzzle on
Well,
him?
we're not going to stop it. It's not going to happen. And another thing, we're not going to stop this show. This is 100 Yards of Football, and we appreciate everybody tuning in here today. Logan Landers is our producer and engineer. Vincent Turner is my co-host, and he is the founder of 100 Yards of Football. And our special guest today is Buddy Curry, former Atlanta Falcons linebacker, University of North Carolina, and Danville, Virginia star. Probably a member of multiple Hall of Fames. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But first and foremost, Vincent, we get to have one of the legends just after the grit splits, but some of the great times in Atlanta Falcons history was involved when number 50 was on the field there.
Outstanding football player. I remember him because I was a freshman at the University of Arkansas, and I remember him. Well, I'm going to go back to a longer story. 17-year-old senior, attending Southside High School, North Carolina, played Nebraska in the Liberty Bowl. They had a running back, famous Amos Lawrence, and they had this big press conference, and they have all the teams together. And all of a sudden, they're interviewing Amos. Then they go on the defensive side of the ball. We like to introduce you to Buddy Curry, our star linebacker. Even though North Carolina didn't win the game, but they represented themselves that year in the 77 Liberty Bowl, losing to Nebraska 21-17. But I believe Mr. Curry had like a 10-tackle game that evening. Back to you, Hawk.
Well, he had many 10-tackle games and then some. But, Buddy, first and foremost, welcome to 100 Yards of Football. We're so glad that you could make it on short notice. We know there's a lot going on in your life right now, but thank you for being a part of our show today.
Harper and Vincent, it's a pleasure.
Well, on June 4th, 1958, one George Jessel Curry was born in Greenville, North Carolina. And George Jessel soon became Buddy. Talk a little bit about how the name change took place. And it didn't happen on day one, but was that a nickname that your friends come up with? Is that something that family and friends? Talk a little bit about the how Buddy ended up being a part of who you are for the rest of your adult life.
So the real name is George Jessel Curry Jr. My dad was George Jessel Curry Sr. Georgie Jessel was an entertainer back in the 1920s. My dad was born in 1933, and so he was named after him. And again, I'm sure they were thinking, what do they want to call me? They called my dad Big Bud, and so they called me Buddy Boy. So Buddy stuck. So
you are early vaudeville. Is that where George Jessel came from back in the day in the 20s? That had to be something, right? Or the what are they called? The silent movies. They weren't the talkies yet. Those were silent.
Yeah. What is it? Charlie
Chaplin.
Yeah, Charlie Chaplin. I don't know. I've not seen him. Maybe I've seen him a time or two. But there we go. There we go.
Well, he played the accordion. I don't think you do any of that, though, right? You never played the accordion. Buddy, talk about early life for you. You end up in Danville, Virginia, which is basically right on the border there with North Carolina there on the southern end of Virginia. I know that my Passover and the view that I've been able to see, a lot of fields around, a lot of sports and athletics, baseball all over the place. Was that something that as you were growing up, that Little League baseball and playing basketball with your buddies and maybe even some street hockey or anything like that? Or was it just drag racing? Because in certain parts of North Carolina and Virginia, there's a little bit of moonshine that got run around by some of those stock cars.
Well, yeah, I grew up in a great time. So you're talking about the really early 60s and then going in the 70s when I went to middle school and high school. Just a great time to be, to grow up. And then Danville is known as a tobacco community. It was, I guess, the tobacco capital of the world, where they got the best prices from the auctions that they had in Danville. Danville, like many areas, we had baseball, basketball, and football, right? And football was big. Baseball obviously was big as well. My favorite sport was basketball. And I went down to the playground all the time and played. And the city did a decent job of providing, facilities for us. And we'd go down and battle. I'd go in the morning at 10 o'clock, and I wouldn't get home until my mom actually came and got me and put me in a car, because I just love to compete. And Danville had a big mill. It was called Dan River Mills. It was a textile mill. Unfortunately, it was a casualty of globalization when they moved the jobs overseas. And boy, you talking about devastating a community. It was really difficult for a lot of people.
I would imagine, yeah, sensitivity with one specific product or service that you would have. And then if that moves, now you're still growing tobacco there, is that correct? Or is it just they're trading it in that part of the country?
Oh, I think they're still growing it. And I was not a grower. I grew up in kind of the city, if you will, although Danville was 48,000 people, 50,000 people. So it wasn't a big city, but I didn't pull tobacco. That you talk about hard work now, that's a job.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there you talked about being a great time to be a kid. I always knew when the game was going to end, when the streetlights would go on, and you'd hear one mom telling one of the kids from 3 blocks away, "Time to come home," and then you had to finish overtime, and in some cases double overtime in order to have the winner of the game for that day. Was that anything a part of what your growing up was like?
It was. I had a group of kids in the neighborhood, and we hung around together and played ball. Obviously, it was not complicated. You got up in the morning, you ate, and you went outside. And I stayed outside as much as possible. I didn't have, we didn't have all the distractions that we have today, all the conveniences. We just went outside, and if it was 100 degrees, it was 100 degrees. We weren't worried about having some kind of dehydration or sunburn, which I got frequently with my complexion. But we went to each other's homes. We stayed outside. It was just a wonderful time to grow up.
I would think the visits into one of your buddies' houses real quick, right? You get a glass of water, maybe some ice, and half a bag of chips. You split that, and then when mom started to smell how bad you got, at 14, 15 years old, and then she kicked you out and you had to go to somebody else's house because you smelled so bad. But that's because you're outside sweating all day.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Well, at least in my case, oh my gosh, you could tell that. But you're playing basketball all day long, and then your baseball. How many tennis balls would you go? Would you play tennis ball, baseball? Or over the line, some of the great games back in the day.
Golly day, we didn't play much recreational baseball like we did basketball. Basketball's simpler, you got 5 versus 9, and we maybe played a little wiffle ball, but it was mainly basketball, and then we had tackle football. And we were glad we didn't play in the street. We played in a playground, but every time I played, it seemed like I got hurt. I broke a bone or something. So, there's a transition that happened in me. I was about, I want to say 9 or 10 years old, where early, if I lost a game or if I got hurt, I would go home crying, right? And then I just made my mind up I wasn't going to cry anymore. And I began to compete at hopefully a higher level. And I remember that transition was pretty pivotal in my life, in my career. So,
well, usually the fight was over. That was a foul, and you didn't call it, but not fist fights. I'm sure there were some other kids that would get into different things, but athletics kept you out of trouble. I would imagine it does for so many young boys and girls.
Well, it did. And what you learn when you have free play, see, I don't even know if we know how to spell free play today, because nobody refereed. You had your characters that would not continue to play the game and would protest on, you called the foul or you'd fouled, and they would take a stand, and then you'd have to negotiate through it, which really kind of helps you learn how to negotiate and how to handle adversity. At the same time, it was right in the beginnings of desegregation. And so, man, shoot, me and all the black guys, man, that's the way that's the way we rolled. I mean, I would be the only white guy playing basketball. And so, I don't know that anybody cared. We just played and competed. And I looked at it as a challenge because you had some guys who were really good, and a lot of them were older. And so, you had the basketball game going on the court, and this is the playground. And then you had the bottles that were in paper bags on the side. So after the game, they would go drink what was in the bottle in the paper bag and then go back out and play. And of course you could smell the stuff, but it didn't matter. We just enjoyed the true value of competition, the joy of going out and competing, and you're not worried about any of that other stuff, how much money you're making, how do you look, it was like win. And you learn how to, okay, losing's not an option. We're winning. And so you win, and you figure out a way to do it. And so that, I think, intensified my competitive nature, as well as my dad was a high school basketball referee. And then in Virginia, you had a lot of small single A schools, and he would go in these gyms, and they were cracker boxes, and they were packed. Basketball was really big in Virginia as well. And man, the intensity and just, you could feel it. You could cut it with a knife almost. And I just enjoyed going with him to the games he refereed.
Did Dad bring you up? Did he bring you often to go to? Do you see? Was there a certain player or a certain school that he wanted you to be able to get exposed to in terms of, hey, this team right here, they've been state champs, or these guys are going to give you a run for their money, and you're going to the game, you want some popcorn, you want a candy bar, but you're also getting a valuable lesson, and additionally you're getting some time with Dad.
So interesting. So my dad spent all the time with me. So he would come home from his job. He was in pharmaceutical sales, 2:30 every day, and he was going to come home at 2:30. And he played with us. So he competed with us, played with us, and then wherever he went, I went. And so, I mean, we travel. But here's the change, and I mean, lots of changes, but we never talked about, college. We never talked about pros, ever. I never thought about it when I was growing up until my junior year in high school. I never, ever thought about playing ball in college, much less pros. Things just fell because I tried as hard as I could. I was 6'4", and I was a beanpole, but I had some ability. And then I go to college, and the same thing. I didn't care about playing pros. I cared about competing with my friends. And I still had that competitive, desire and competitive spirit. And so when we think about how we're intentional in exposing our kids to stuff like that, I don't think there was anything intentional with my dad. It was just organic. He's a sports guy. That's really what he knows. And he works in order to come home and be with his son and go do sports stuff. Interesting.
Yeah. And I would imagine that football in the fall, and then winter is basketball, and then right out to play baseball, going all the way up into high school. So basically, there's only when you're out on summer break is when he doesn't have to take you to practice.
Well, that's another thing. They never took me to practice. I just walked to the playground. I walked to the elementary school. I walked to the middle school. So it wasn't any of that. The parents were not in my way. Okay.
Yep.
I know that if kids really would tell us the truth, they would say, "Mom and Dad, could you just get out of my space and let me enjoy this without the supervision and all the intentional life lessons," which I'm the worst at. All the stuff that we do, just can I enjoy it? I want to play with my friends.
Yep.
And I want to compete.
Yeah, I know one of my issues as a dad is, okay, I want you to work on this. You got your Dad, I just want to play. I don't care if I miss the shot. I don't care. I'm just having fun. There has to be that aspect of it as well.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah, but it's so competitive now. All right, you get into high school now. You're at George Washington. You're north end of the campus, right? If you punt or kick a ball a little bit too far, it's going in the Dan River. You're right on the water there, aren't you?
It's very close. Well, yeah, it's pretty close, but it's kind of on a hill. And yeah, I think it was the largest classification in high school. The closest game we had was 35, 40 minutes away. It was
Wow.
South Boston, Virginia. So we went to Pulaski County, which was a 3-hour drive. So that was all in our district at the time. So yeah,
Well, because your speed and because your versatility with your basketball prowess, I think Tony Gonzalez gets a lot of credit, in my opinion, for being the first to say this. Now, he's probably not the first, but the first time I heard it was when Tony said it. He said, football made me a better basketball player, and basketball made me a better football player. And I understood exactly what he meant. I would imagine being able to mesh the sports that you played in grammar school and elementary and all that kind of stuff just kicked right in. And even though you were a beanpole in terms of your size, and weights weren't a real big deal back in those days, but your speed, your athleticism, and I would imagine your conditioning, right? They couldn't take you off the field.
Well, that is true. And I agree with that. Football and basketball are really, they help each other, and I think improve each other. So improve you in that. So yeah, I agree with that. And boy, when I look at skill development, man, it was like I worked out today. So I ran 3 miles. And like today we would go, what does that have to do with football? Right? What does that have to do with being a linebacker? By golly, I was in shape. And even my first year with the Falcons or it was some technique stuff, but man, it was a survival of the fittest. It was so difficult practices. It was really intense and difficult. And so you learn how to survive. And then once the game time came, what kicks in is, okay, the explosive nature of the hips, what you have to do, how you read and how you are intuitive about where the play may go. All these things were kind of natural to me. And I developed muscle memory because I probably played a lot and free played a lot. I could just kind of tell where the ball was going to be. Even in basketball, if somebody is on the left side of the court and they shoot the ball, I'm looking at the trajectory and I know where to line to get the rebound. Just I have that sense about me. It was a God-given gift,
Okay. Yeah, there's a cerebralism that you need to have that gets you to that next level too. I would imagine in the free play time where you're running routes that, I need to do this to get open. Well, when you're playing linebacker, you go, okay, I know what this guy's going to do to try to get open, so I'm going to prevent him from doing that. And being able to do that little cat and mouse chess match that you have to have in your head to be able to stop. Is that something that you felt was an advantage for you when you were a freshman, sophomore, junior year in high school?
It was a 3-sport deal. I'd decreased it into 2 sports, so basketball and football. I didn't play baseball anymore. So we started lifting weights in football, and that was kind of a cool thing. And it was a team game or a team building thing. But golly, all of the techniques and the film study, man, I'll be honest with you, I didn't do any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. I went out and played, and I could play.
Yeah,
I could just play. You see these guys now that they're Power 5 or whatever you call them. What are they? 5-star people. That. Look, man, they don't need any of this training. They need 0 training. They're a 5-star. They can go out and play. I know that upsets people when I say that. No, I could play. I could play today. I could play.
You just got what it takes. Vincent, I've hogged up most of the interviews so far. We're talking high school and just about when you're ready to go into North Carolina.
Man, I like the confidence there. I love it. I'm going to start with you. You set the tone for George Washington High School located there on 701 Broad Street, because I looked at all the great athletes that followed you. So, Mr. Curry, you must be telling the truth, because Herman Moore came after you, Johnny Newman, Pharrell Edmonds and his sons, Stokely Fulton, And then I'm also going to bring in the city of Danville. Let's don't even talk about the high school. Everybody must follow you because you famous. Charles Stanley, Wendell Scott. Man, you the smoke. You came out of Danville. I did my research last night, and all these great athletes followed you at George Washington High School. And then you held in high acclaim in Danville with the great late Charles Stanley and the great Wendell Scott. Talk about those times there.
Oh my gosh. The athletes, we had all kinds of athletes. What we didn't have a lot is great students, right? I mean, I think that was probably common in the area, but man, our skill positions, boy, we could play, right? And fortunately, I had a mama that made me study and maybe do all these things. But when you're surrounded by people that are acclaimed, now, I didn't know Charles Stanley at the time because I guess he'd probably moved to Atlanta. But I did know the next neighborhood over is where Wendell Scott lived, and I'd go by and see his race car in his driveway. And my best buddy Kenny Lewis, who we were co-captains of the team our senior year, he went on to Virginia Tech and break the rushing record there. And his son ended up playing at Virginia Tech as a linebacker, and also he played baseball. But he lived in that neighborhood, and we were there a whole lot. We were taking Kenny home and kind of hanging out some. But yeah, I mean, and then the guys after me, that Danville has no problem with athletes. No problem with athletes. It's getting people to be more well-rounded and understand that that athletics is just a part of your life. It's not the total, and doing the right things along the way, put you in a position to take advantage of the opportunities that come your way.
Well, Everett University, even though a very, very small school, is just a stone's throw away from high school. When did you start thinking, I may have a chance not only to go to college, but get to do so and play some football?
Well, when I started getting recruited, I think my junior year, after the first game, I broke my collarbone on my right side, and I was out till the end. We end up going to the playoffs. We went up to Northern Virginia, to Woodbridge, Virginia, and they had it looked like a college team, man. They were huge. And the coach put me in a special linebacker position because they were going to pitch the ball to a guy named Russell Davis, who ended up going to Michigan. And it's going to be Russell Davis right and Russell Davis left. And my gosh, I must have tackled that guy 15 times. And the scouts that were at that game kind of targeted me for the year, and I started receiving a lot of mail, if you will. And so then I'm thinking, well, man, maybe I can go to college. But before that, I didn't spend any time about playing football in college. I knew I wanted to go to college because that was the thing to do.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So after your junior year, you break your collarbone. You missed most of the year except for that playoff game, or did you get to have some spot time where you get on the field as you're healing? And by the way, the trainer always put up two fingers to tell you how many there were. It's always two. It was never three. So you bang your head up, whatever. Just say two. How many fingers am I holding up? What day of the week is it? Right. This is back when it put tape it up and put him back in the ball game.
Yeah. I just played the first game and the last game because the collarbone was real fragile. It was a compound fracture, a complete break. So they ended up tacking it. They put a nail in it to help it heal.
Yeah,
kind of weird.
Right.
Yeah.
And what a horrible time to miss. Well, what was your off season like going into your senior year? Now that you've got a chance to play and you're in the weight room a little bit more, you can run. Your speed is one of those assets that many people would like to have, but that's just a gift you've got. Did you go into your senior year thinking, this is it now, me, you, and your buddy, or two or three friends of yours, this is it. Let's start focusing and really doing everything we can to have the best senior year we possibly can put together?
Oh, me, boy, I wish I could. That's a great narrative, and that's something that we can probably talk to our kids about, but I got none of that.
Okay.
None of that. I mean, I went on with my life. I had a good time. I worked out in the afternoon at school before my senior year in college. You're talking about, right? Excuse me, senior year in high school. And
Before college, yes, your senior year of high school, correct?
Yeah, I worked out a little. I worked out and I ran some and all, but it wasn't like you'd run sprints to get faster. It's just you ran long distances, and we just didn't do that. I didn't have that kind of training.
Okay.
And I went out and I think I had an okay year. It wasn't a great year. And look, man, I made Western District, but I didn't even make all region or all state, right? I was 6'3", 100 and I guess 90 pounds at the time, and ended up taking a scholarship to University of North Carolina. And then the second semester of my senior year, that's when I started getting serious. And I joined a fitness center, and I went Monday and I worked out hard, and I went Tuesday and I did the same thing, worked out again. And a guy says, "Look, buddy, you need to get some rest." I said, "What are you talking about? I'm going to work out. I'm going to work out every day, you know?" So I didn't even know anything about how to weight train. So I didn't do research. I just worked out and played and had fun. So, yeah. And then
when your senior year is over, is it fair to say that even back then, because the signing day was the first Wednesday in February, you started taking trips and getting a chance to see some of these local schools that were interested in you, go to games on Saturday? Was that a part of your recruiting?
I went to 2 games, I think. I think I went to 2 games, one in Kentucky, who was the number 2 team on my list. And then I think I went to North. No, I didn't go to North Carolina. But anyway, it wasn't college. I just didn't go to the games. It wasn't that big a deal to me back then.
Well, you said Kentucky was number 2. Going to their campus, what was the thing that made you say, I might end up being a Wildcat? Was there a portion of that? I mean, their program, in my opinion, has always been, gosh, we're just one step away. We're close, but we just don't have it.
Well, you look up 76 and 77, which would have been my freshman and sophomore year. That's the last time that they have won the SEC. And boy, they had a great team.
Okay.
But the thing I did is I researched the linebackers and how many linebackers the schools had. But see, my dad went to Kentucky, and that was his true love. And then North Carolina was an hour from Danville, Virginia.
Okay.
So I ended up meeting my college roommate who went to our arch rival high school in Lynchburg, Virginia, and he ended up committing to North Carolina. And then I committed soon after.
Well, what was it like walking on that campus the first time? It's absolutely gorgeous. And we teased beforehand, if you don't like trees, then you don't want to go to UNC, because it is just littered, if you will, with just big, beautiful trees that have been around for hundreds of years. And the landscape, the architecture, not every building looks the same. It's just a very unique spot on God's green earth, isn't it?
Oh, it's wonderfully beautiful. The challenge I had is that I was in total survival mode. I was scared to death. I got no idea what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm heading into. And then, boy, the first practice, the first week and a half practice, oh my gosh, I was getting killed. I mean, I couldn't do anything right. And I'm thinking, man, this is not for me. But God put something in me. It's called a no quit. And I ended up persevering through it. And that's through learning how to extend myself to a whole nother level in college. From high school, I was absolutely exhausted. And I remember one practice, I didn't know if I could take one more step. And then I took one more step. So you learn how to overcome your body, but hey guys, you talk about speed, you talking about size. I was 197 pounds, 6'3.5". I ran a 4.9 540. I could bench press 225 pounds. Everything was weak, everything, but by mid-year, I'll be confident nobody could block me. Right. And didn't matter. I could just play. And what I was able to do is just garner all my attention and focus, and I learned how to strike, and I just had that intuitiveness to escape blocks and miss all that stuff, and then I can make the tackle. So in my life, one of the themes is that, buddy,
Buddy, did you start there as a special teams guy? So were you a punt?
I did. I started the first game at special teams. We played Miami, Ohio. The first play that I was in on defense in the fourth quarter when we were beating them pretty bad, the quarterback throws the ball right to me, and I have an interception. I look at it as God helping me have confidence. And then 4 games later, after the 2 guys in front of me, which were seniors, they had pneumonia. They put me in, and they never got their job back. I took it and played the rest. So 11 and a half years of my life.
George Gipp, you were Lou Gehrig for a little while, weren't you?
Yeah, I guess old school. You could just say, instead of Buddy Curry, you could just say old school. I'm playing. I'm playing, and whoever it is, I'm playing, and I'm gonna win. I'm gonna, it's just, I guess you're bulletproof at that time of your life.
Well, you mentioned the interception that you had there. Your senior year, you had 5, but the team had 19, if I'm not mistaken. There was another player that had 5. I don't have his name in front of me. I think he was your punter. But long story short is your athleticism, your speed, and your ability to be able to kind of figure out where the quarterback was going to throw, either with his eyes or what the focus of the offensive play was, the combination of the tight end, the running back, the receiver breaking over the middle. That had to be a great value for your later pro years, but that was something you either have it or you don't. They tease people all the time, say, what a wide receiver is called that doesn't make any catches, and it's a DB, right? You move them over to cornerback. You probably could have played on offense.
Well, I don't know that I could have played on offense. I think I was specifically designed to play linebacker, but the speed I had, I ended up going from a 4.95 to probably a 4.7, 4.75. I wasn't fast vertically, but I could really move horizontally. I was very explosive. I could read and anticipate. So my first 2 or 3 steps were really explosive. I was a good linebacker in terms of the run play, but I could really break on the ball. And I think that you're right. I think that really served me real well to help enhance my pro looks.
Vincent, go ahead. I know you have a couple other questions for Buddy, obviously, from the college era.
Okay. Talking about your career, I looked up some things last night. You 21st all time as an interception leader in the ACC with 12, and some great players ahead of you. So that's good that you brought that up, that you was always around the ball. But what really stuck in my mind, I read something last night that said North Carolina's all-time 5 linebackers in the history: Donnell Nicholson, Brian Simmons, Mike Welcher. The final name, Lawrence Taylor. Then the final name, Buddy Curry. But what's really amazing to me, and remember, I was 2 years behind you. I was attending University of Arkansas, but I read another article where they said that when you look at all the great linebackers that was playing college football at the time, you was the most overlooked. When we talk about George Crumley, when we talk about Mike Singletary, when we talk about David Little, when we talk about Jerry Robinson, only because you played in the ACC. But when they said no bones, no mate, Buddy Curry is one of the top linebackers in college football. And then the NFL talent y'all had on y'all team. Even though a lot of people might think y'all was a basketball school, But Amos Lawrence, Donnell Thompson, who was one of the best defensive tackles back then in college football. Then you had D. Hatterson, another great D lineman. Ron Wooden, who's an outstanding offensive lineman. T.K. McDaniels, Alan Caldwell, and then the great LT. Man, y'all was a serious football team, especially in the 79 season when y'all defeated Michigan in the Gator Bowl. Talk about all those great memories.
Well, yeah. So you're talking about our defense that started in the Gator Bowl, and so Michigan is one of the marquee teams, and you got North Carolina playing them. And so I remember when the two teams meet, you always have kind of brunches or where they invite the sponsors in and all that, and they laughed at us. It was so interesting laughing at they're laughing at us. So our defense, our front seven, which is 3 linebackers or 4 linebackers and 3 linemen. Out of those 7, we had 2 number 1 picks, 2 number 2 picks, 2 number 6 picks, and a free agent played 3 years. And after them were other NFL players. We were loaded. On offense, our offensive line was loaded. So yeah, we had lots of talent there. It was a privilege. And then you go to the greatest linebackers, and without a doubt, Lawrence Taylor, in my opinion, is the greatest linebacker to ever play the game, pure talent wise. And I knew him when he was Lawrence, not LT. He comes into North Carolina and he's 6'3" or 6'3.5". So we're the same height, but he was like 185 pounds. They tried him at nose guard. He got hurt his freshman year, moved him, and he started a game or two at outside linebacker, moved the inside backer. Then he moved him back to outside. And finally, his junior year, and especially the last game against Michigan, is when he became the LT. For him, it was always connection between heart and head and getting all of his ability and focus to where he ended up getting, which, obviously was great. I wouldn't have told you that he would have done what he did. He was not that dominant in college.
Oh, buddy, that's something to me that speaks for itself. You being in
Obviously, we have some problems.
Yeah, we're good.
Man, we're gonna keep moving. One other player I wanted to ask you about today is Steve Streeter. Without the car accident, how great a player would he be on the next level?
Well, Steve was a good safety, but punting the ball, he was fantastic. He was from the mountains of North Carolina, really, really country guy, great guy. And Lawrence and him were traveling back from the airport, and he just signed a contract with the Redskins as a free agent, I think. And boy, he had a car accident. And but I think he would have been a great punter, and he was a great competitor, great teammate.
And then when you look at those North Carolina teams, you on your first year in school, y'all went 9-3. Then in 77, you went 8-3-1, and then 78, you had to step back 5-6. But that 79 team, you had a couple of close losses. But that team right there, buddy, y'all could compete with anybody in the country. And a lot of it was because of you, young man. And just talk about what would it like for you if you could have played against the Oklahomas or Alabamas back then.
Woo, yeah, I don't know about Oklahoma, Alabama, because next year they had an even better team in 1980, and they went off to Oklahoma, and they were introduced to the greatest show on earth, I guess. Man,
right, I remember that. Yeah,
and when that wishbone gets going, it's tough. But the talent we had, we could compete, I think, with anybody. I think with the Alabamas and the Penn States and USC, we could have competed with those guys. I'm not sure what the end of score would be, but I know defensively we could compete with them.
Well, yeah, but you start that year, you beat South Carolina, they beat the brakes off them. Then you get Pittsburgh, right? We just had Jackie Sherrill on the show. You beat the tar out of them in front of 50,000 people. 17-7. Then you go to Army, Cincinnati, and then you lose to Wake. That obviously was a big setback. But you played 4 top 20 teams that year.
We did, and going back to Jackie Sherrill, that Pittsburgh team was as talented as you'll find anywhere, anytime. The Hugh Green, Ricky Jackson. Then you got Mark May, Rush Grimm, Jimbo Colbert. Marino didn't even start. He was a freshman. They had a guy named Rick Tricano who was a quarterback. But, I mean, boy, they were just loaded. And they came down to Chapel Hill, and it was about 85 at game time. And it had rained a couple hours earlier than that, and you could see the steam coming off the field. And that was one of the games where it was survival of the fittest. I mean, both teams were just exhausted. I'd gotten IVs and all that stuff, but it was quite a game. That was one of the honors of playing college football, to play somebody like that and come out on top. Because I think they went on and they were undefeated the rest of the year, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had some great teams, and how good are you to have Dan Marino on the bench? But Freilich might have been a part of that. I think he may have been a freshman that year, not quite ready. But you mentioned some of the other guys. That's an offensive line that I imagine certainly different than what Army showed you the next week, right? Or maybe NC State or East Carolina. I mean, you talk about guys that are going to be NFL Pro Bowlers on that team.
Yes. Yeah. That's true.
Just amazing. But then you go to Maryland and then Clemson. You had back-to-back losses, but you picked everything back up against Virginia. You go to Duke, you beat them, and then that Gator Bowl that you mentioned against Michigan. And that's your last game, right? But you played well. What was your final thoughts in terms of putting a season and a career together and trying your best to make North Carolina at least a little bit better when you left than when you first got there?
Oh yeah, I really think we were building. We were building when I left. I think the NFL talent really was starting to gush out of the university. The most important thing, in my opinion, is the guys I played with, and I played with some great men that went on to become great husbands, great fathers, great businessmen. There were 3 guys drafted my senior year. Myself, a guy named Doug Pascal in the 5th round, and then Phil Ferris in the 11th round. And then the next year's when we all started flowing, where you had really high draft choices. But the greatest part about North Carolina, the school's nice and all that, but hey guys, it's the players, it's the relationships. Yep. And I still have those relationships with those guys. It's wonderful.
You mentioned the players. Talk a little bit about the coaching staff, because Dick Crum, that was in his 2nd year, so in between your sophomore and junior year, you get a new coach. And I know in a lot of places you're going, I don't know if I'm going to fit in there anymore. There was no transfer portal back then, or at least if you left, you'd have to suffer through that. But talk a little bit about some of the coaches that made a difference for you, whether it be your linebacker or the defensive coordinator, someone who said, listen, I'm going to do everything I can to maximize what you can do. And we're going to do what we can to help improve not only this defense, but your role within it.
Yeah, the coach I had was named Denny Morrison, who ended up coaching pro ball. I know he's with the Jets and I think maybe the Giants. But, man, he coached a long time in the NFL. But just a great guy, defensive coordinator, I talked to him after everything was all over with my career as well, knew his family and all that. And then, had Dick Crum came from Miami, Ohio, and he had coaches that had not, most of them hadn't played in the high Division I ball, and they came to North Carolina. And I think the first year they were overwhelmed, and we had a returning team that as a sophomore, my sophomore year, we'd won the ACC. It's the only year we won it while we were there. And just things didn't fall in place. And we had lots of ability, but just didn't fall in place. And then I think once the coaching staff got their feet under them, and then once our senior class left, I think they hit their stride and end up having a lot of years. But Dick Crum, I think he did a good job while he was there. I appreciate all the coaches I had while I was there.
Well, speaking of while you were there, I'd be remiss, and I know Vincent would like to know a little bit more about your off-campus life. In other words, other things to do on campus, meaning just going across a couple of buildings and watching the basketball team. Obviously, the UNC tradition existed long before you got there, but just an amazing time also, in my opinion, with Dean Smith. They eventually built the Dean Dome, but they weren't in the Dean Dome when you were there. What was it like getting to see Wake and maybe Clemson, but finally Duke? Well, I mean, and just bringing out that rivalry and being a football player that says, you know what, our basketball team can bring it too.
I appreciate you asking my question, because that was the highlight, from a school standpoint, was going to the basketball games. My freshman year, towards the end of the football season, I'm walking on campus, and the basketball players are a head above, taller than everybody else. So I see Walter Davis coming down, and that's Sweet D, man. Sweet D was like, he was my favorite. And we're kind of passing, and he goes, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" I went, he spoke to me. And just like, these guys were almost icons. They're like football players today, if you will. Well, they would give me and my buddies an opportunity to sit right under the basket at the old gym. It was called Carmichael. Then there was some rubber seating that if guys had a layup or dunk, they would keep the momentum going, and instead of hitting their shins against or knees against metal seating, that they had the rubber. So we would sit on the rubber part of it, and then when they would come in and dunk, man, we get up and we're doing high fives, but it was absolute big joy of going and watching those guys compete. And you could go in the summertime. They had an auxiliary gym they called Woolen Gym, that was the gym before Carmichael, and they would have summer basketball games, and you could watch a pro game there because they had all these pro guys playing. And this was right before Michael Jordan got there. So, yeah, special times. And Logan's put a picture up of Duke, and I'm sure that color blue and just the font that they use, there's just something that grotesquely doesn't fit for you, does it? I mean, it. What a joy! What a joy! There's so many great memories going to those games and cheering for those guys, and then we got to know them, especially as I moved on from sophomore, junior, senior year. We used to hang out with them sometimes, and it was just a great time to go to school there.
Yeah. I learned very uniquely. I went to a couple of UCLA football games when I was in high school. And then I had a friend that lived 3 blocks east of the campus there, and he'd invite me over, and we occasionally go to a basketball game. We'd either sneak in, after the game started. I had $3 to my name back then, and that was $1 for French fries and another $1 to play in the arcade. And then, if I went home with any money at all, my mom would reward me and give me another $1, just because I didn't spend it all. But different crowd too. The basketball crowd, uniquely different. Some of them would never go to a football game, but they had great expectations at UCLA, obviously with UNC and their basketball program as good as it is. I'm not going to say there's a stuffiness to it, but I imagine there's times where even they would get up and jump and shout like the kids in the student section would, because this is a great game and we're beating Syracuse or we're beating Wake or we're beating State. And it's just fun to be a part of that atmosphere, and being so stinking good as you guys were for all those years had to be a great value for you, just being a basketball fan.
Oh, we cheered for each other too. You're right. I mean, they would come to football games, and that's how they knew who we were. And they were big football fans, but they would not play football. Now, all of us would play basketball if we could.
Sure. Yeah.
But they're not going to play football. They're not going to risk all that banging and stuff. So
yeah. Well, your senior year is done. You have the Gator Bowl. I'm going to say there was no combine back then. What do you do in between the time that you're You're done in January, and then get ready for the draft. And how many teams were interested in you? Did you have any visits from several different organizations before Atlanta ends up taking a look at you?
Yeah, I tell you what, get really interesting. So after the season, I had shoulder surgery. I had a AC separation that on my left shoulder, and they had to take off the end of my collarbone. So that took about, a month, 6 weeks to kind of
hold on, buddy, real quick. Hold on. But I don't mean to interrupt you, but you pointed to your same shoulder. Is this the one that you broke when you were younger in high school, or is this the left one?
Yeah, I had the collarbone break on my right, and my left was the one that had the separation. It's called.
Please forgive me. I'm sorry. Okay, so yeah. Hey, you didn't have to work on the bad one. You had to work on the good one to make it better.
Well, the reason I had an operation, I didn't have to have it, but it was so I could lift weights, and I knew I needed to get stronger, more powerful, and all that. And I couldn't do the incline bench because it just hurt too bad. And so anyway, I had it. It was as non-invasive as you can. They just took off the end of the bone and sewed me back up. Now, we didn't have the combine as it is today, but we had 2 physical dates where they brought in top players. So one was in Dallas with the Cowboys, obviously. And the other one was in New York with the Jets, hosted. And all the teams were there, but you couldn't work out. They had little tests that you did. Like if you saw a dot, you had to step with your left foot, how quick you could move your feet to the dot, or how fast you could move your finger. So it kind of tests your reaction time. But it was nothing like anything physical today in terms of running and jumping and all that. You were put through a physical, so they checked you out and all that. So yeah, so those are the 2 things I went, and then here comes draft day, and I'm supposed to go into the first round, beginning of the second round, and so we have we are at the apartments where I was living in Chapel Hill. And the end of the first round happened, and so I just wanted to go back to my apartment. I wasn't disappointed that much; just went back, and so I'm on my way back to the other apartment that where I live, and they yelled at the door, "Hey, the Falcons are on the phone." I'm on Falcons, guys. I'm gonna be real honest with you. I never seen the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, I didn't watch pro ball that much. I just didn't. I watched Dallas, which is my favorite team, and Pittsburgh. But I don't know too much of the rest of them. Maybe Oakland or something. So anyway, they said, "Buddy, we're thinking about drafting you. Want to be a Falcon?" I said, "Sure." Here we go. But before that, I think another important thing is that I did have a couple visits. I visited New Orleans, who said they would have drafted me next. And then San Francisco, who would have drafted me, I think, a couple after that. But the Oakland Raider defensive coordinator flies all the way to Chapel Hill and has a meeting with me. And he asked me 2 questions. The first question is, "Buddy, do you consider yourself a mean person?" And I'm going, "How do I said, "No, I'm not a mean person. I can ramp it up when I need to." "Buddy, you consider yourself a mean player?" I said, "Yeah, I'm pretty mean. I'm a pretty mean player." Yeah. So obviously those weren't the right answers because they didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't draft me, So
well, Monty Johnson, I think, was their interior linebacker back then, and they had some. The Stork, I think, was still playing for them on the outside. Was anybody talking about moving you from inside to outside or vice versa? Did you know, well, we think you'd be perfect here, right? Or
what's interesting is I played the same defense except for 2 years, all the way from high school all the way through pros. Okay. So we played a 3-4 defense in high school. We played 3-4 defense in college. And then it was 3 years we played a 4-3. And then I was in kind of the outside, and then they moved me inside. But yeah, I was a kind of born inside headhunter. And I didn't have the speed, I think, to play on the outside to do what those guys needed to do.
So what's the difference for you? A difference between you got to see it personally with speed between you and, let's say, Lawrence Taylor. Lawrence is 1/10 of a second faster than you in the 40. Uh, you know what I mean? His ability to go down the line of scrimmage and catch a guy that's running on the opposite side of the field was legendary.
Yeah, you say one. I'd say 1 to 2 at least.
Okay.
Different in speed. I think he was always pretty fast. But then again, at the time it wasn't that vertical. Lawrence probably on defense probably changed that a little bit because how he could pursue from the back side was phenomenal, right? It was more gap control. You had to make plays on the outside, and I could go inside out as a linebacker as long as I had a cornerback that turned it in or somebody that turned it in, right? Yeah. So if that answers your question.
Yeah. Vincent, any other Chapel Hill questions before we move on to the NFL?
No. I just want to know, Mr. Curry talked about him being a rookie and winning that NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. So that means he came with a mindset of that smoke is coming. Talk about you being the NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year your first year in the league.
Well, the difference between high school and college for me was the Grand Canyon. I mean, it was a huge transition. The difference between college and pros was not that much. I was ready to play. And it's a matter of being acclimated and learn a little bit of the defense. And I could do that. But at the end of the day, I'm playing the same position and I'm reacting and I'm playing and just making plays. And so the challenge in Atlanta was in 1980, there were 24 days in a row over 90 degrees. And we went 2-a-days for 7 weeks. And I really couldn't believe they treated professional players like that. It was absolutely brutal. Every drill was hitting. It was only an hour and a half in the morning and an hour and 45 minutes in the afternoon. But man, I'm talking about guys. It was on the whole time. And then with the heat and the relentless practice, there was no days off. It stretched me, right? But as a second rounder, they kind of had slotted me to start. The guy that was in front of me the year before is Robert Pennywell. They called him the battery. And Robert, if he hit somebody, it was like a battery hit him. You dropped him, right?
Yep.
He wasn't as quick or as fluid maybe as some of the other linebackers. And then Greg Brazina, if you guys remember that name, he retired. And then when I came, they gave me his number, which was kind of cool. But that year was, look, man, fight or flight. I'm flying. I'm fighting. I'm surviving. We have a 9-game win streak. I'm scared to death before every single game. Some people say, well, are you more? Do you like more to win, or do you like to not lose? I didn't want to lose. I didn't want to be embarrassed. The coaching at that time was not the attaboy coaching. It was different. Okay. And so there was a lot of accountability from a negative standpoint, and also wanting to perform for your teammates, but ended up having a great year. Al Richardson and I both shared the Defensive Rookie of the Year in one of the polls, and another one, I think I got it. But bottom line, Al was a rookie, obviously, and Al played over the tight end and had 7 interceptions. Incredible year he had. Just great playing with him and all that. But fast forward to the Dallas game. So we win that. We win 9 games in a row. We go out to LA and play. It goes into overtime. Falcons had never been beaten LA until earlier that year in Atlanta. We go out there. We go into overtime. Our offense fumbles the ball. They end up kicking it, and we lose. We're okay. We're okay. We had the best record in the NFL, tied with the Raiders, but we had home field advantage the whole time. We go against Dallas, and Dallas was my team growing up. I remember Don Meredith, and Roger Staubach throwing a bomb to Bob Hayes, man. Oh my gosh, it was unbelievable. And then you got Tony Dorsett, and I used to go, man, this guy's really, really good. Now I'm trying to really hurt him, right? I'm trying to kill him, not hurt him. That's not correct, but and so what a change that is. But before that game, we had veterans that had only been to one playoff game before.
Wow.
And these guys got up, and it was a Saturday meeting. We're playing on Sunday night. But they got up and they started talking about our team and talking about how good we were and talking about their personal accountability and how they're going to play. And like, I'm in this meeting and like my chair lifts off the ground, man. I'm going, I'm ready to go. Oh, wow. It was an unbelievable meeting. We had great leadership. We had so much momentum, and we were really beating the Cowboys pretty well until that last, quarter, kind of end of the last quarter. So great year, great first year. It's still kind of a whirlwind because I don't know any better. I came from a winning college program, go to a winning pro program. There was an article in Sports Illustrated. It had the cover was Atlanta Falcons team of the 80s. How about that? Yeah. It was sometime in like February or March or so. Team of the 80s. And it had a great article about us. We never had another winning season.
Oh, yes. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, sad.
Yeah.
Sad.
All right, begin for me with the draft. You get to become a Falcon. You've got mini camp and all that. You got Lehman Bennett. There's a guy named Jerry Glanville as defensive coordinator. Now, people say all kinds of different things about Jerry. One of the things that I say is this guy knew football inside and out. Yes, he got tickets for Elvis. He did all that. That's because he knew what he was supposed to do. And in a way, I think he got bored. But one of the things I give Jerry credit for, and maybe more than you would, is finding situations where I've got a fast guy here and I got a fast guy there. Why would I want them to play slow? I'm going to attack in a way that other people haven't seen. Come hell or high water, Jerry let you guys run, didn't he?
Oh, he let us play. Yeah, it was not complicated on defense, and he let us run and play. We ran and hit. And what Jerry was, he was great at finding the matchups. You're right about that. But he was great at motivating. Then the motivation was, we are going to beat the other team up. Okay. We may lose the game, but they're going to come out boozed, bruised, and they're not going to want to play anymore. We're going to make the running backs quit running because we're going to hit them not only hard, but we're going to hit them often, and we're going to gang tackle and swarm. The films that we had during that year were famous across the NFL because if your offense, you hated them, but on defense, coaches are going, well, this is how you play the game. This is how you run. I mean, guys would run and just throw their bodies. It was really something to be proud of. Again, it's not a career lengthening way to play, but I'm proud to play with the guys I did and under the leadership that we did.
Well, you mentioned Al Richardson, of course. Al was, a 7th or an 8th rounder that year. Junior Miller, I thought he was a real interesting, quote-unquote, missing piece for the offense because the grit splits just a few years earlier gave up the fewest points in league history, but the offense couldn't score. They'd win 6-3. The opponents would because we couldn't score offensively. Junior, I thought, and then obviously with Lynn Kane coming in, and then you've got William having to practice against him every day. I'm throwing a lot at you, but inside and out, wide receiver. Junior was that guy, in my opinion, that you can't defend this team now because if you double or even single on the outside, I'm going to hit Junior over the middle, and it proved to be a very, very potent combination for Bart.
So let me give you my tackle on the offense. So we have 5 offensive linemen, and 3 or 4 of them were Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
They can flat out play, right?
Talk about Dave Scott, biggest 300-pounder back in those days. That dude, you'd have to go against him every day in practice. That dude could play.
Thankfully, look, that's Arthur Cox there, but thankfully I didn't have to go against Dave Scott because he was 290, and that was a lie. Okay, and he was a big man, and he was a great drive blocker. Okay, so
RC, right?
R.C. Gilman. Then you have Jeff Van Note at center, right? And then you
There.
have Mike Ken, perennial All-Pro, and then you had Warren Bryant. And then they add number one draft choice, Junior Miller. Guys, let me tell you something. That guy, if he would have been able to handle it personally, you're talking about a Pro Bowl, Hall of Fame. He had every tool. Great blocker. He was a 4.6 plus guy. Could run routes. Could catch the ball. He was the real deal, right? And I think he made Pro Bowl or maybe assistant alternate his first year as a rookie. He was good. And then you got the wide receivers, man. You got Alfred Jenkins, who was phenomenal, and you got Alfred Jackson, and then you got Wallace Francis. Oh my gosh, man! And they could flat out play. And then of course the quarterback Bart was great. As good a touch and a good an arm quarterback as you're going to find in the NFL at that time.
Yeah.
And then our two running backs. This is what was special. Both of them were played fullback for their college team.
Yeah.
So it wasn't any of this prima donna stuff. Both of them blocked great. Both of them ran the ball very well, right? And they were great team players. They could catch the ball in the backfield. Very difficult to defend all those weapons, as you said. Here's the thing. William Andrews was the best football player I ever played with. Okay. William Andrews was a great football player. Okay, he ran the ball. That wasn't the best thing he did. The best thing he did was blocking.
Pass block. Yep.
No, run
blocking. Really, I was going to say he'd punish you if you were running up the middle, and like Walter Payton does to Dennis Johnson in that game against the Vikings. I'm interrupting you. Sorry, buddy. Go ahead.
No. I watched him take linebackers, and I just felt bad for him. He just splattered them, man. He was a total football player, the greatest teammate. He was that guy. I'm just really proud to play with him.
Let me ask a question. If I'm a Raiders scout and I'm asking you about William Andrews, is he a mean person?
No.
Is he a mean football player?
No.
Really? I thought you'd say, oh man, that dude plays like he could be an inside linebacker. Man, that dude hits people just like you would want him to be hit.
Well, I guess also it depends on your definition of mean.
Okay.
He would run over you, through you. He's not going to do a lot of juking now. It's not going to be a lot of this stuff now. Yeah. It's like 1 foot and I'm going north-south and the people are bouncing off of him like bowling pins. And you'll see all kinds of highlights on him. He catches the ball and turns and the defensive back comes up, smacks him, and the guy just bounces off and he runs. Anyway, just tough, low center of gravity, could do it all.
Yeah, and then Lynn Kane to complement that, and then Bart being able to dump it off to everybody. Now, Steve's knee, he had his first of the surgeries that would end up slowing him down. But Steve has said before, he goes, I could stand on the goal line. I could throw the ball to the other goal line. I could throw a little bit more than 100 yards. But you mentioned the touch, right? He knew when to zip it, and he also knew when to kind of pull back and make it a catchable ball. Earlier in his career, he didn't really have that same type of touch. But by the 80, one thing he said to me once was, he goes, I threw for 3,200 yards. He goes, Harper, in today's game, I wouldn't get to keep my job if I only threw for 300. But back then, I led the league. I was one of the first guys to throw for over 3,000 yards.
Yeah. He was also a good leader and just making plays. He was not going to run now. He didn't have the wheels because of his knees and all that. But
right.
Just you were confident that he could put the ball where we needed to put it. Yeah. The other thing I was going to say about William Andrews and that guy is you could count on him to make the play and to do the dirty work of whatever needs to be done, including if there's a 2 yards to get the first down, or maybe it even wasn't a first down. He's not going to step out of bounds. He's not going to dive on. He's going to give it everything that he's got to get that extra yard. He's going to fight for it. One of the great things about Walter Payton, and people, I'm asked often who my favorite running back or who was the toughest guy. That's a hard question, but the guy that we respected the most was Walter Payton, because that's how he played. He didn't turn down a contact. And in today's world, that's not smart, right? I mean, you don't do that today because it beats up your body. But man, we had so much respect for him by how he played, in the manner he played. You know what I mean? It was a respect factor from that standpoint, not how much money he made or all the other stuff that's measurable these days.
Would it be fair to say that all throughout Walter's career, and I'm going to assume that William in much the same respect, he gained 115 yards, but there were 7 or 8 plays of ball game where he's just barely getting back to the line of scrimmage and he gets nothing, or maybe a half a yard. He gains 1. But he gives you everything he has. And you knew that from a defense. Hey, it doesn't matter, first play, last play, any play in between, this guy's going to give me everything he has. Even though he's only going to gain 1 yard, I'm going to have to hit him like I would if it were a fresh first carry of the ball game.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and William carries that over as well.
Mm-hmm.
You're 12-4. Now, I've heard this, and this is just my opinion. From a ownership perspective, from general managing perspective, player personnel, from the coaching perspective, in 1980, you were young enough to where people weren't expecting the team of the 80s, and you were kind of ahead of the pace a little bit, being 12-4. We thought we'd be 8-6 or something like that. Is there any truth to the rumor that management wasn't ready, because they knew that you're going to want to renegotiate, you're going to want to make more money, and this is at a time the Falcons, in my opinion, were pretty tight. They weren't free spending like Oakland or Washington Redskins and their ownership. It was a completely different ball game. So from a managerial perspective, what on earth? How can you not keep this team together? They're young, they're good. Yeah, they lost a playoff game, but don't break them up.
Oh boy, that's a great question. I haven't really thought a lot about that, but I know the next couple of years they really got rid of a lot of guys. I don't know they got rid of the core, but there's some guys that there's questionable. I know that they were tight. It was a different era back then. I know that everybody wanted to go to the Super Bowl. I think the ownership and the management was more of, we want to be relevant, we want to be competitive, and we want to make money, And so I think that how they managed their budget was, like I said, not like San Francisco or Oakland or some of those guys. I don't know where everybody's contract was because I was a rookie. I didn't study that stuff.
Right.
So it's a good thought.
Times were good for Buddy Curry, though, too, weren't they? Because you just come from the Gator Bowl, you get to go to the playoffs. Man, this is easy. You lose the next year, you go in 82, and then that's it, right? I remember Mike Ken telling me when I joined the team in the early 90s, we go to the playoffs. We had a wild card game against New Orleans. He goes, "Hey, man, I've been to this game 15 years, and I've only been to the playoffs 2 other times. Value this and do everything you can to extend it and keep going." Your perspective on the other end of that, where, hey, I'm a rookie and we just, we're 3 points away from going to the NFC Championship game.
Well, yeah, I mean, bulletproof, man. I mean, we the first 6 games we were 3-3, and then we went on that 9-game win streak, and it was phenomenal living in this city and watching the city just come alive and support. I remember coming back from the airport, and back then, of course, you could go into the concourses, and we'd be back at 2:00 in the morning, and there would be line with people cheering us as we came back, from the airport. So it was everything and more that you could ever hope for being a pro ball player. But guys, I didn't live like a pro ball player. I lived like I was still in college in terms of I was scared to death. I was trying to make the team every day. I didn't take anything for granted. You know, I drove around in a Chevy Chevette. Okay. I never looked at myself as a pro player. I'm a guy that played pro football. It wasn't my identity, if you will. And I'm soaking it up and I'm going, holy cow, this is the coolest thing. I look at it back at it now, and what a blessing to be able to go through that in your first year. You know, the regret, if you have regrets, is that I really didn't appreciate it. Like Mike Ken told you, I didn't really appreciate it. But how could I appreciate it? Because I'd never gone through it before, you know? So.
Yeah. Well, one more thing before I let Vincent go. You mentioned folks coming to the airport and all that. About a month earlier, December 7th, I'm looking at it right now. You go to Philadelphia and you're playing a pretty good Eagles team. And everyone that I've talked to from that 80s team said, we beat the tar out of them. The final was, 20-17, but you beat them a lot worse than that. I mean, they scored a late touchdown or maybe even two, but that would have been, you know, if it weren't for Ed Too Tall Jones jumping into that gap, and he was offsides, everybody knows it. You go to Philly and you beat them. Now you're playing the Raiders for the tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree Super Bowl.
Yeah. That's a coulda, woulda, shoulda, right?
Yeah.
That's I think we would have had a lot of confidence going into Philly, or they would come into Atlanta, because we played them in Philly the first time. But hey, man, we didn't get past it. We didn't. And you know, I explain momentum, right? And how can you explain momentum? It's almost like this: if the momentum is against you, it's like you're standing underneath a waterfall, and there's nothing you can do. It's coming down at you. And a great example of that would be the last time the Falcons were in the game against New England and the Super Bowl, and like they couldn't make the play, and there were so many times they could have had an interception but they just didn't make it, and that's momentum. And when the momentum's behind you, it's nothing you can do is wrong. You know, even if you make a mistake, the guy drops the ball, or there's it doesn't work out in their favor.
Right. Yeah.
One day I'm going to hopefully understand that a little bit more, but they had the momentum in the fourth quarter, and you could see it, you could feel it, and there's almost nothing we could do.
Yeah, it's one of those great tragedies in Atlanta sports fame, really, if you want to look at it that way, and such a tragedy. I know a lot of people, I say January 4th, 1981, and the first thing out of their mouth is, oh. Yeah. Because you had it. Yeah. It's the Dennis Green line. We had him and we let him off the hook. And so I'll leave it at that. Vincent, take us to a higher and better place.
Okay. I'm looking at Mr. Curry, your 83 season. 229 tackles, the best in Falcons history. But what really made me impressed when I was looking over this last night, I looked at the running backs that you played against that season. Peyton, Jackson State. Sims, Oklahoma. The young stud out of Sealy, Texas, Eric Dickerson. Then New England, Tony Collins and Craig James. Then the bruiser, the Kansas Jayhawk, Mr. John Riggins. And then you ended the season against Joe Cribbs. And I want people at 100 yards to hear this today. This is what greatness is about when you talk about the NFL. This gentleman had 229 tackles against this type of talent. This is what makes you excited following the game. You have the floor, Mr. Curry.
Look, you mentioned all those names, and I'm just privileged to be able to play, guys. I mean, those names, holy cow, were they great athletes and great running backs. And I'm going, I look back now and I'm going, man, did I really play? You know, And now going into it, I was playing the position on our defense where I was an outside backer in the 4-3, and we were matching up. And I would, like, when the tight end would go in motion, I would go in motion with him, and that was not a good position for me because I had bad dehydration problems anyway. So I'm doing all this extra running, and I'm cursing on the field while I'm in motion. But the coach told me, he said, "Buddy, you can't get hurt," and that's all he needed to tell me because I didn't think I could get hurt anyway. So I didn't get hurt. I didn't miss a play. I played, and when you have that many opportunities, hopefully you'll get. In other words, have that many snaps, and you're hoping you get that many tackles. But that was obviously my best year, I think, as a pro. That and my rookie year were the two best years. But again, when those running backs, thank you for mentioning that's just a privilege to play against those guys.
You gotta say, when you play against Walter Payton, man, that's my father's favorite football player. That's history there. That's royalty there, Mr. Curry. Don't let nobody tell you wrong. When we looking at 100 yards of football today, and we talking about great linebackers and played this game, people, listen, he had 229 tackles that season. Look at the list he had it against. Peyton, Sims, Eric Dickerson, I say a young Eric Dickerson, Craig James, and War Eagle himself, Joe Cribbs, and a guy I wouldn't even want to try to tackle, John Riggins. We need to bow down to you today, Mr. Buddy Curry. Back to you, Hawk.
Well, buddy, what's it? You started Chicago. You beat them 2017. You're 1-0, and then you lose 6 of the next 7, if I'm not mistaken. And that happened a few times in Atlanta. But you mentioned Greg Bazina. You got his number, and then Mr. Falcon, right? Nobis was overlooked in terms of Hall of Fame. He and even Dick Butkus and Ray Nitschke both said, "Hey, man, that guy was he had better numbers than we did, and we got to go, but he was just on a horrible team back in that time. But for you to surpass their numbers, I mean, that's really saying a lot. I know you're humble, and I appreciate your humility and that. Oh, shucks, whatever. But dude, you were a bad man, Bajamba."
Well, you talk about Tommy Nobis, and I played beside Fulton Kuykendall for a number of years, and we would be out somewhere, and he'd say, "Curry," he said, "you think you're tough." He said, "You couldn't hold Tommy Nobis's jock," right? Tommy Nobis, you look at his background, he was both Outland Trophy. Wasn't he offense and defensive lineman in college? Yeah. Both?
Well, he was a linebacker, but on defense. But yeah, he was a guard at Texas and an All-American at that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that guy was phenomenal. And his practices, the way he showed up to practice, were legendary because he played in practice like he played in the games. And I remember the Glanville coaching staff tried to get me to play like that, and I wasn't willing to do it. Just be real honest with you. I'm not going to decleat people in practice, not on my own team and all that stuff. And so I guess that's why I'm not a mean person.
Well, let Tommy do it, right? If you want someone to hit like Tommy Nobis, bring him back, even though he couldn't move anymore. John Marshall, Bobby Jackson, and Jack Christensen. I know from my personal experience, Colorado State, Jack Christensen was one heck of a football player, was with the Lions, won some some NFL championships there. You've had some other coaches. This is Dan Henning's year, right? So Lehman gets fired. You bring in Dan. You've been through some coaches now in just a short amount of time. We always tease with Jesse Tuggle. There was one time where in 5 years he had 4 different defensive coordinators. You had to learn a new system almost every other week, didn't you?
Yeah, it was not quite that often, but yeah, we had to learn new systems and you had to adapt. I remember watching Jeff Van Note, who played, I think, 20 years, and watch him take notes every single meeting on what the coaches said. And God, I wish he would have written something about that. But the ability to adapt when you're making your first year that he played, I think it was like $11,000 or whatever he was making to making what he was making at the end. But to be able to adapt to the different changes in the game, the different generations, and be able to be productive, I think that's a real gift. That's an honor.
Michael Strahan of the Giants was doing a show. I don't think it was Good Morning America, but there were some other football players around. It was probably a podcast, and one of the things that he said, that when I thought about it, I kind of put my my index finger up to my chin and rub a little bit to think about it. He said it took me. He goes, probably 3 full years, probably at least in year 3, but probably my 4th year in the league before I learned how to be a pro. My first year, everything, it just flies right by. And next thing you know, you're going into your summer before your second year. But, learning how to pace yourself and how to play the game the right way, where you didn't have to think about it. You just reacted to it. They would tease Lawrence Taylor. He'd go fold his towel up and go lay down on the floor and sleep during meetings, but he knew everything that he was supposed to know. He would pass any type of test that a coach would have. That doesn't happen your first year. You've got to really get a better understanding. Is there some truth in that for you? 2, 3, maybe your 4th year in the league before it just you were the best player you possibly could be?
No. I think I was better at studying the game by the end of my career than I was at the first part of my career. Studying the game didn't make that much difference. I don't know, just different guys. I'm a different kind of player. I was just instincts is what I played off of, and instinct. So did I become a better pro? Yes, I became a better pro. But with that, I'm going to say, on the contrary, you become a better pro, but you may lose the eye of the tiger. Okay. Before I became a better pro, I was so instinctive and so reactive, and I didn't make a lot of mistakes. I just could play. Like Lawrence at the end, is when you're talking about sleep on the floor. I wouldn't do that, obviously,
Right.
But I could just play. I could just see it, and they had me in a position where, I did call the defense, but I didn't study like I think they begin to study it as a defensive player later, the towards the end of my career. So I guess the answer to your question is, yeah, it takes a little while to understand the way to play. But for me, it wasn't a big transition there.
Yeah. Well, you remind me of, and I know you didn't play baseball, but you're a see ball, hit ball guy. I go to the ball. I find the guy who's going to carry it or find where it's going to go, and I react accordingly. I go make a play. That's my job. That's what I do. Don't overcomplicate that.
Yeah.
Trips versus the motion, and then they go across, and then they empty backfield. Today's game has so many different ways to try to fake somebody out, but really go find the ball and go make the tackle.
Yeah.
That hasn't changed.
I think at the core of it, because it really boils down to where there's an offensive player and a defensive player, and they've been going against each other all day, and one of them's got to figure out how to win. And you've got this repertoire of your moves and the things that you do. You've seen him on film, but you still got to play that next play, and you got to figure it out. You got to be tougher. You got to be lower. You got to be more explosive. You got whatever it is. So I think some people may say chess match. There's a little bit of that into it, but also there's a will. And for me, the will to compete and win superseded everything else. Everything else.
Well, you mentioned that freshman year practice or two that you had at North Carolina. You mentioned the heat and the humidity of Atlanta for a while. um, there's always this, I need to get better. Did you have moments where you go, gosh, I gave my best move right there and that wasn't good enough. I need to develop a second move. I need to work on, I'm constantly needed to improve and enhance my abilities if I'm going to stick around for a while. And what was that like for you specifically?
Well, it was hell until I figured that out. It was
Okay.
because to me, not being successful is not an option. I always started, and even though I was just playing special teams, I took every practice that during the week on those first 4 or 5 weeks that I wasn't starting, and it was Super Bowl for me. And I punished everybody that I played against, and I challenged myself every single snap, every single play. Guys, again, I'm a linebacker. I got 2 speeds, either on or off. And those are the practices and all that is when I think overcame whatever inhibitions I had or what I needed to learn in terms of the defense and what I need to be successful. So when I got out there, when I started, I just played. And but yeah, there was a time, those first, 4 weeks of training, which about 2.5 of them, I was not good at all. And then when I started getting it, I got better and better and better. And I just started increasing, just about every year.
Yeah.
My production.
Yeah. There's a development that I think every player has to go through no matter who you are. And, even if you're not a Pro Bowler or a guy that, is going to make quote unquote all-stars, you still need to enhance what you got. I mean, Michael Jordan, we talked about him a little bit earlier. Near the end of his career, he couldn't jump like he used to be able to, but he didn't want to get his stuff blocked, so he worked on a fadeaway shot. Think about that. Just what are you talking about? Fadeaway? Yeah, no, this is going to take me to the next level and keep me in the league, and I'm going to be relevant. You watch. And it was a part of his arsenal. Yeah, he could dunk on you still. Maybe not the way he could as his rookie or, first 3 years in the league, but, keeping whatever it is. Mention the coaches, another coaching staff change, and then another coaching staff change. And then next, they're going, hey, buddy, there's not any room on this year's roster for you. What was that like for you when you found out that this may be, as Chuck Knox used to say, I got to get on with my own life's work?
Going into my 7th year, they had a coaching change. Marion Campbell and his staff came in and had a meeting with my linebacker coach, and I'd had a pretty good reputation around the league, and I was I didn't know it, but I was on the chopping block at the time.
Right.
He thought I was that over the hill, if you will, and I made a decision that I was not going to go down and not be swinging. If I was going to do everything I could from a physical standpoint and mental standpoint to come and compete and not only start, but have my best year, a good year. And so I made that commitment to myself, and I did. And they wanted me bigger. So I went from 220 pounds, which I played, and I reported at 222 pounds.
Oh, yeah. You showed them, didn't you?
I couldn't run. I couldn't run very well. But I had probably my, 3rd best year or something like that. And at the end of it, the coach told me, he says, buddy, when the season was over, he said, buddy, you're quite a competitor. And so next year they had me teed up to be again, one of the leaders on defense, and I got hurt. But I knew going into that year, and especially in preseason, I didn't have the hip hop. I couldn't play. I just couldn't play with where my body was. And so I went on injured reserve and finished the year on injured reserve, but it was done. And then the off season, they said, buddy, we're going to go a different direction. And, and I was ready for that. They said, look, San Diego and Seattle have called, and I think they're interested if you want to go and sign a contract or try out with them. I said, no, man, I'm done. And I didn't, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I didn't go to the media we did. By the way, we didn't like the media back then, so I just didn't go to the media, and with it, I just que sera, bye bye. My time to go. And so started on the rest of my life, which is a whole lot harder than football. And we've talked.
Yeah. We'll get into that in a second. Vincent, anything else football career-wise?
Talk about Bobby Butler right quick as a teammate.
Bobby Butler comes into Atlanta. I think he was 155 pounds, first-round draft choice. He can run, right? He can cover. But you're talking about 155 pounds in the NFL, right?
Yeah.
And Bobby Butler came to work every day. He competed. He was a really good player, great teammate. And as you guys may know, but he and I have been in partnership with Kids and Pros for 24 years. And I love his family. We know each other. He just officiated my oldest son's wedding. But we spend a lot of time in the summers together. And as a football player, I mean, his coach was a guy named Jack Stanton, who was a very difficult coach, very tough mentally. And Bobby not only withstood it, he really appreciated him. And so Bobby could do the hard, if you will. Great teammate.
Yes, sir.
Bobby would often say that, and there's some others that when I was with the Falcons in the early 90s, Dion, of course, and then Jamie Dukes, and my time at Florida State, he would say, like a father figure, in so many different ways. Bobby Bowden was a tremendous inspiration in his life, not only as a football coach, but just, what are you going to do after football? And Bobby, I'm sure from the time he first laced him up as a Falcon, had that end in mind. There is going to be a day when I'm not going to be playing anymore. What am I going to do, and how am I going to be prepared for that? And so the relationship that you and he had, you develop, you're not coaches, but you're basically helping young kids get to understand that type of message, and that there's much more to life than just, when you have, like the picture here, you have a ball in your hand. What else are you going to do? What other tough decisions are going to be a part of your life, and how are you going to make the correct ones?
Guys, it is a difficult transition from pro ball to life. It is just, and I think it's difficult for everybody because you end up, your identity is in what you do. And it's the same thing as so many men, it's like the first question is what you do. It's like who are you? Who are you? Well, it's what you do. And then you learn that then what you've done, you can't do anymore. And so you got to search and find what's your next identity. Now, these days, guys have money to transition, which I'm very thankful. I had some money to transition. And so did Bobby. I think he did well financially. And we found ourselves, if you will, and being a great, hopefully a great husband, a great father, and giving back to people and help young people and families learn how to navigate this very difficult field of sports. It doesn't matter what sport it is. Sports are crazy in this country, and now that it's become a money thing, it's just quadrupled the intensity of things. So to learn how to do that, I think I would want to talk to a grounded guy like Bobby Butler to kind of help navigate if I was a parent.
There wasn't any school or test. There wasn't any advice. There weren't any psychiatrists. There weren't any people offering any help to you, buddy, because it didn't exist back in those days when you were done. You had to learn the hard way, as many people do, not just with athletics. You get, you lose your sales job. You're no longer able to work at the plant or the factory. It's not easy. How did you cope with that and realizing the fact that I don't know everything I need to? That's hard for one, is just recognition of I'm going to have to get smart again, and I'm going to have to be open to different opportunities in a way that I got to figure out what's best and what's right? Is there a combination and a meshing of those two things? I got to find out what's right for me and what's best in the decisions that I make.
Well, what a great question. I think going into it, you've got to understand that you have skills that companies and this world really wants, and the fact that you were successful at the highest level of NFL ball. Now, what does NFL ball have to do with IBM? I don't know, but what they want are people that are tough, that come to work every day, that know how to deal with different kind of people, that are competitive, that are driven. They're gonna execute a game plan. All these things that are common to athletes, that if we can utilize those into the next thing in our life. And my daughter explains it this way. She says, "Dad, you've taught us how to be elite," right? You think about the word elite. So what that means is that they've saw me, hopefully they've seen me endeavor to be a great husband. Boy, I got a long way to go. To be a great father, to be great in whatever I do. So whatever I put my hands to, I want to be great at it. Coming out, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I did networking, and it ended up coming down to a couple of different jobs. Ended up moving my family up to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and worked for a transportation company. And boy, was that not a good fit for me. But I didn't quit.
Right.
I didn't quit. And I stayed with it for 9 years, and I learned corporate culture. And then it kind of teed me up for, because life builds on, you build brick by brick. It kind of took me back to Atlanta. I did a recruiting and placement company that helped people do exactly what we're talking about right now, learn how to leverage their skill set in businesses to get jobs and do well in business, and then helping kids with the same thing. Learning that what they're learning playing sports is learning how to be a good sports person, learning how to never quit, learning how to be a part of a team, learning how to persevere, learning how to be excellent in life. All these things that make for elite. So, what's come out of it is I want to be elite in my life, and I want to help other people get there, and during that transition process, I had to deal with me and my inadequacies and my weaknesses and all that. And that's where, really God had me come to faith. And I'm just so thankful for those very, very, very tough days that I went through. Yeah.
Well, of all of what you mentioned, there's a message in there for anyone. But let me add to this also. Is it fair to say that you have to learn to fail, not learn to accept failure, because that's not part of your anatomy, but learning that when you do, that I can quickly, or at least attempt to quickly rectify that and turn a 2 + 2 = 5 into 2 + 2 = 4, and then proceed and get back on. You get knocked down, you get back up. I've seen so many guys in special teams get knocked down, and I notice the guy that gets up faster than the other. That type of picture story is an example to me that I know we all have failures. We all need somebody to help us out. But being able to quickly rectify some of the bad things that we've done, acknowledge them, but don't dwell on them, and then move on to be something bigger and better. There are steps to do that, correct?
Very good, Harper. I think when I go back and think about it, you said see ball, get ball, right?
See ball, hit ball. Yep.
So when you're that way, there's a lot of failures in your life once you get out and you're not doing the research and you're figuring out as you go. There's a lot of failures in there. And I had that resilient attitude is what you're talking about, that I was not going to be defeated. Everything in my life has come through the hard and dealing with the hard. So perseverance is a big word for me. Never quit. So I could fall 100 times and I'm still getting up and I'm coming back at you. Okay, you learn that on the football field, right? What about in life? And this is stuff that really hurts and really is significant when it comes against your family or your loved ones and all that stuff. Man, I got to get better. Failure is not an option here. So I'm going to sit here and feel bad about myself. No, we're going to learn and we're going to move forward, whatever that forward is. So, I think that was probably the biggest thing for me to learn or to make that transition to. I am going to learn from all the missteps or failures, whatever you want to call them, and build on those so that I can build a repertoire of success. And therefore comes confidence, as confidence has been defined as repeated successes, right? And when you get out of football, you're not success. You don't know what you're successful at, right? You got to figure it out. And so my journey has been through the failures, and a lot of it is in leadership, and the failures of leadership when you're a see ball, get ball person, to navigate life with people coming alongside of you to help you lead or to be co leaders with you, a la my wife. So
there's a scene in the movie A League of Their Own where Tom Hanks and Gina Davis are having a conversation, and near the end of the movie, she's going to quit. She's going to go back, and she's got her husband who's just been relieved of duty in the war. He's injured, and he says, "Why are you leaving?" And I'm kind of paraphrasing here. She goes, "It just got too hard. It got too hard." And he said, "The hard is what makes it great."
Yes.
What a fantastic line in a movie that didn't really, it was an entertainment movie, but for me, that was a great line. I've used that. Even my daughter once wrote that up on her wall as an inspiration. The hard is what makes it great.
God, so
go ahead, buddy. I'm sorry.
To have your kids in that place that they understand that, number one, life is hard, right? Number two, you got what it takes. And the harder it takes, the bigger the victory and the bigger the glory. Man, those things right there. And, I've told my kids in a meeting, I said, look, okay, we're going to enjoy, we're going to have experiences and all that. I said, when, not if, when things get hard for you, I'm standing with you. I'm not sitting, I'm standing with you. And I got whatever I am, you got, here I am. And of course they're going to get life lessons. That's for sure. That's for sure. But
yeah, was that a come to Jesus meeting that you had there at the Curry house? That one particular one?
Man, we have
those at the LeBel house. How do yours go?
They have come to Jesus meetings all the time. I mean, they want, Dad, can we just go play golf or something?
Yeah. Do we have to have another meeting? Yeah, we kind of do. I need to get this off my chest every once in a while. So I know what you're doing, but let our listeners know how you keeping busy right now.
Well, I'm in a process of retiring, so we're gonna have our 24th year of Kids of Pros. We're gonna do some events for the Falcons again this year, and then some smattering of other events. And Bobby Butler and the guys we have are great men, and they want to continue. So we're going to do that. And my wife and I are going to move somewhere. We think it's Florida, and we are in the process of selling our home. And all the kids are out of the house. We just had our last one. I think I told you guys, married a couple weeks ago, and we are ready for the next phase of our life. So it's a really good time for us, being empty nesters and all that. But the big joy is when I'm around guys like you, who we share so many values, we share faith, we share a desire to make an impact on people's lives. Because as you move into your 60s, and in my case, late 60s, legacy is big. And I want to leave a legacy of not only give my children a good name, but I want to leave them with the ability to develop relationships, the ability to sustain relationships, starting with their marriage, and then their families, and then the people that are important in their life. Because as you guys probably realize, that the goal in life is relationships. People think it's money, people think it's fame and all that. If you don't have relationships, you don't have a lot. So I'm investing in relationships. That being said, you know, you and I have a meeting on every other Friday. We get a group of men together and we talk about life, and it's a very transparent meeting. And we want to help people, that guys that show up. I have another meeting the night before. I do some life coaching, and then you know, the next door neighbor, when we talk, he gets it full both barrels. So I enjoy getting involved with people, meeting people, and hopefully helping them any way I can.
Well, you said you were retiring. Tell us a little bit, where would we go if you want to know a little bit more about Kids and Pros, there's mission, and how if you've got a youngster, whether you be a grandparent or a parent that might be able to take advantage of not only some football skill sets that everybody would need to know, but some non-field intelligence, and get to work on some things that help create better character and better human beings.
We have football camps, and I'm not sure how many in the Atlanta area we're going to have. I know we're going to have one in Lynchburg, Virginia, Danville, Virginia. But almost every Sunday, I have a group of young men, and I like the ages 9 to 12 or 13. If they are a 5-star or something like that, probably not. They're probably not going to get with me. That's not what I do. I want the younger guys. I want to be able to help them form a mindset of doing the hard, of working hard every day, and all that. As you know, most parents are about, is he going to go to college, or is he going to go play pro? I'm not. Look, they're 9 years old. They're 10, 12 years old. So I'm not going to do that. But the website is Kids and Pros, KIDSANDPROS.com. If you want more information, and you can send me a message that way. And maybe join us in Beaufort, Georgia on Sundays. And I'll be there probably most of the summer, about every weekend. So, and then you can also look on our website for the camps we may have this year. So, yeah.
You have had many great quotes. The one that gets me every time is, Harper, what's the number one reason why most kids quit or stop playing sports? And I said injury, or it could be a bad coaching. It doesn't matter. And then you said the answer is the car ride home. And what a double-edged sword that can be. Parents, have fun with your kids. Yes, talk about the game and all that, but have fun with rule number 1, have fun with your kids, right? Rule number 2, if anything happens, refer back to rule number 1, right? There's some important things you need to do that aren't fun. You got to get them done, but make it enjoyable. Even if it's a bad experience and they didn't play well, it has to be fun, and let them enjoy the game and learn it their way.
Oh man, Harper, that's so good. And I know it took me a long time to get that. And I have such a heart for parents as they're struggling to get that. But please don't be their coach. Please don't be their coach. Just be their parent, be their cheerleader, get them involved, go to the games, go to practice if you want to. You'll know if the kid really wants you to go to practice or don't. I mean, I know for me, I didn't care if my parents went to practice, because I went to practice for me. I didn't go to practice for them. Oh boy, that's not a bad. That's a bit. It's like,
yeah.
I wanted to compete. and I'm glad my parents were there. If they weren't there, I'm still competing. It's not, you know what I'm saying? And so you'll learn your kids, but the best thing you can do is be a father or a mother or a grandparent. And just, hey, I so much enjoyed watching you compete, son or daughter. And let's go get ice cream, or let's get your snack, because that's why they play anyway. They want the snack, right?
Yeah, don't forget that the snack, and especially you can become a cool kid if you bring a really I mean, my wife brought bananas and cheese or something. It was healthy, and no one ever wanted her to bring any of the snacks ever again. So make sure you cross that line very carefully. Final thoughts, Vincent. Here we've had almost 2 hours here with Buddy Curry. We'll want to be respectful of his time.
Respect. Learned a lot in this particular video today. Learned a lot about being a man, to be honest about you. Being a father. And I'm just blessed today that we had Mr. Buddy Curry on. Not as a football player, but as a great human being. Learned a lot about him today. What more can I say? The mic is dropped. Blessings all over 100 yards of football. Thank you, Mr. Curry. You're one of the best we ever had, and we appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. That's all I got to say. Back to you, Harp.
Well, Buddy, your final thoughts. I know there's a lot of things that you have changed over the years in terms of what is important, what is pivotal in your life, and it's never too late to say either I'm sorry in a bad relationship with somebody else, with your child especially, or a spouse. But go ahead and do it. Don't waste any time. Go say you're sorry, mean it, and then let's get yourself back on track and make your life the best.
Well, with all the things we have going on in our country and how we've kind of gotten away from the values that we have had that made this country a great country, golly, guys, we need to really care about each other and care about our communities. And it starts with one-on-one relationships, and see people and spend time with people and find out where they are and find out their story, and then sit in with them as they need to heal or they need friendship. We need friendships. We need people that we can relate to, that we can provide value to. And then what we find is that these people will provide value to us. And so, as I spend the last years of my life, ever how many they are, I'm committed to make a difference and help people. And I want to start whatever that kind of movement is, but we're going to hopefully make a difference in the communities that we go to. And in Harper, for you, I've really gotten to know you the past few months, and I'm really thankful for that opportunity. And Vincent, you are a man of character, I can see. And
oh, yes.
And really appreciate the opportunity to spend time with you guys.
Well, I appreciate that you didn't say I'm a character, but a man of character is what you were referring to Vincent, and I agree. Well, you mentioned a little bit earlier about how important it is for you to have a good name that you pass along, not only for your kids, but throughout society. So George Jessel, Buddy Curry, well done, my friend. You've done a great job of that. And we want to say thank you for Buddy to be a part of our show today. We want to thank Logan Landers for our producer and engineer and finding all those great pictures and pulling up some very interesting shots throughout our conversation. For our co-host and founder, Vincent Turner, for Buddy Curry, I'm Harper LeBel saying thank you for tuning in to 100 Yards of Football, everybody. Have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thanks, guys. Blessings.